Most people live as if time is abundant. Not consciously, but behavior reveals belief. They postpone decisions, delay difficult conversations, assume opportunities will repeat, treat years as replaceable. Analytical thinkers recognize a quiet distortion at work. The human mind is poorly calibrated for finitude. Death is intellectually acknowledged, but emotionally ignored. And this distortion shapes everything. Mortality is not just an endpoint. It is a lens. When mortality is ignored, priorities blur. When mortality is acknowledged, clarity sharpens. The first way mortality changes thinking is priority compression. Infinite time allows everything to feel equally important. Finite time forces ranking. Analytical thinkers do not ask, "What could I do?" They ask, "What is worth doing with limited time?" This question changes decisions immediately. Another effect of mortality is urgency clarification. Urgency is often confused with stress. True urgency is not panic. It is discernment. Mortality strips away trivial urgency and highlights meaningful urgency. Analytical thinkers feel urgency without rushing. Another impact is illusion removal. Mortality collapses comforting fantasies. Someday. Eventually. Later. These words rely on time assumptions that may not hold. Analytical thinkers act without assuming future availability. Another way mortality alters thinking is decision gravity. Choices feel heavier when time is finite. Not because fear increases, but because relevance sharpens. Analytical thinkers choose deliberately, not anxiously. Another impact is attention reallocation. Finite time exposes how much attention is spent on things that do not matter. Analytical thinkers treat attention as non-renewable. Another effect is relationship reprioritization. Mortality reframes connection. People matter more than outcomes. Analytical thinkers invest relationally without postponement. Another impact is meaning acceleration. Meaning feels optional when time seems endless. Mortality makes meaning unavoidable. Analytical thinkers do not wait to feel purposeful. Another effect is risk reframing. Some risks become unacceptable. Others become necessary. Analytical thinkers evaluate risk relative to finite time, not comfort. Another impact is ego reduction. Mortality exposes how temporary reputation, status, and recognition are. Analytical thinkers pursue integrity over image. Another effect is regret awareness. Regret becomes a planning tool, not an afterthought. Analytical thinkers choose paths they can defend even if time ends early. Another impact is distraction intolerance. Finite time reduces tolerance for meaningless noise. Analytical thinkers curate attention ruthlessly. Another effect is postponement collapse. Mortality reveals how often later is avoidance. Analytical thinkers act when alignment is clear. Another impact is responsibility concentration. Finite time demands ownership. Analytical thinkers accept responsibility early. Another effect is value prioritization. Values become operational, not abstract. Analytical thinkers ask, if time is limited, does this still matter? Another impact is decision simplification. Complex choices simplify under finite constraints. Analytical thinkers choose what matters most. Another effect is authorship acceleration. Waiting feels costly. Analytical thinkers stop waiting. Another impact is narrative coherence. Life stories tighten. Analytical thinkers live fewer chapters, but more intentional ones. Another effect is fear reframing. Fear of failure weakens. Fear of misalignment strengthens. Analytical thinkers choose aligned risk. Another impact is energy conservation. Finite time demands energy discipline. Analytical thinkers stop spending energy on misalignment. Another effect is legacy awareness. Legacy becomes behavior, not monument. Analytical thinkers focus on how they live, not how they're remembered. Another impact is presence intensification. Moments gain weight. Analytical thinkers become more present without forcing mindfulness. Another effect is decision honesty. Self-deception collapses under mortality. Analytical thinkers stop lying to themselves. Another impact is clarity without panic. Mortality does not demand haste. It demands honesty. Analytical thinkers move calmly with awareness. Another effect is alignment urgency. Alignment becomes now, not later. Analytical thinkers choose sooner. Another impact is meaning compression. Meaning concentrates around fewer things. Analytical thinkers let go easily. Another effect is life audit activation. Questions surface. Is this how I want to spend limited time? Does this reflect what I stand for? Analytical thinkers answer honestly. The central truth of this chapter is this: mortality does not make life smaller. It makes it precise. Ignoring death creates distraction. Acknowledging death creates clarity. In the next chapter, we will explore the illusion of infinite time and how it quietly shapes procrastination, avoidance, and misaligned living. Time is not generous. That is why it matters. Chapter 2: The Illusion of Infinite Time. Most harmful decisions are not made aggressively. They are postponed quietly. The illusion of infinite time does not announce itself as denial. It presents itself as reasonableness, patience, and optimism. People tell themselves, "I'll do it later. Now isn't the right time. I'll get to it eventually. There's no rush." These phrases feel harmless. They are not. Analytical thinkers recognize the illusion of infinite time as one of the most powerful distortions shaping human behavior. The first reason the illusion persists is psychological distance. Death feels abstract, distant, and unrelated to daily life. The brain struggles to emotionally process long-term limits. Analytical thinkers intentionally reduce this distance. Another reason the illusion persists is survivorship bias. People observe others living into old age and assume the same will apply. Analytical thinkers understand that probability is not promise. Another reason people assume time is abundant is habitual continuity. Life has always continued so far. The brain assumes it will continue. Analytical thinkers recognize this as extrapolation, not certainty. Another factor is youth bias. When energy is high, time feels endless. Analytical thinkers treat energy as temporary. Another reason the illusion persists is comfort preservation. Postponement avoids discomfort. Analytical thinkers accept discomfort early. Another factor is language softening. Words like eventually remove urgency. Analytical thinkers avoid vague timelines. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is cultural reinforcement. Modern culture avoids death. Analytical thinkers reintroduce mortality consciously. Another factor is goal deferral normalization. Delayed living is socially acceptable. Analytical thinkers reject normalization of postponement. Another reason people assume time is infinite is avoidance of emotional cost. Certain actions require courage. Time becomes an excuse. Analytical thinkers separate readiness from avoidance. Another factor is decision load avoidance. Postponing decisions reduces cognitive effort. Analytical thinkers accept decision effort as necessary. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is overconfidence in recovery. People assume there will be time to fix mistakes. Analytical thinkers do not rely on future correction. Another factor is role entrapment. Roles consume time silently. Analytical thinkers audit role alignment. Another reason people assume abundance is social synchronization. Everyone around them is also postponing. Analytical thinkers avoid mistaking group behavior for wisdom. Another factor is future self-optimism. People assume future selves will be more capable. Analytical thinkers respect present capacity. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is misunderstanding aging. Aging does not just reduce time, it reduces flexibility. Analytical thinkers act while flexibility exists. Another factor is false urgency displacement. Trivial tasks feel urgent. Important ones get postponed. Analytical thinkers distinguish urgency from importance. Another reason people believe time is abundant is emotional numbing. Daily routines dull awareness. Analytical thinkers interrupt routine periodically. Another factor is long-term abstraction. Future consequences feel less real. Analytical thinkers bring future impact into present awareness. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is fear of finality. Acknowledging limits feels threatening. Analytical thinkers accept finality as grounding. Another factor is decision deferral addiction. Postponement feels safe. Analytical thinkers treat postponement as a decision itself. Another reason people assume time is infinite is absence of visible countdowns. There is no clock counting down visibly. Analytical thinkers create personal markers. Another factor is overestimation of opportunity repetition. People assume chances repeat. Analytical thinkers treat opportunities as unique. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is discomfort with prioritization. Ranking things implies exclusion. Analytical thinkers accept exclusion. Another factor is emotional attachment to optionality. Infinite time preserves options. Finite time demands choice. Analytical thinkers choose intentionally. Another reason people assume abundance is misinterpreting patience as virtue. Patience is not postponement. Analytical thinkers differentiate the two. Another factor is fear of committing to a path. Paths limit alternatives. Analytical thinkers accept path dependence. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is misplaced hope. Hope replaces action. Analytical thinkers pair hope with movement. Another factor is confusing planning with living. Plans feel productive. Analytical thinkers act alongside planning. Another reason people assume time is infinite is comfort in predictability. Familiar days blend together. Analytical thinkers disrupt predictability intentionally. Another factor is loss aversion. Acting risks loss. Waiting feels neutral. Analytical thinkers understand waiting is also loss. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is existential avoidance. Mortality feels heavy. Avoidance feels light. Analytical thinkers carry weight without avoidance. Another factor is identity inertia. Change threatens self-concept. Time becomes a buffer. Analytical thinkers allow identity evolution. Another reason people assume time is abundant is overvaluing preparation. Preparation delays engagement. Analytical thinkers prepare just enough. Another factor is future bargaining. People make deals with themselves. Analytical thinkers honor present commitments. Another reason infinite time thinking persists is cultural busyness. Busy schedules feel like progress. Analytical thinkers evaluate direction, not activity. Another factor is optimism bias. People assume favorable outcomes. Analytical thinkers plan without optimism reliance. Another reason people believe time is infinite is absence of urgency cues. Life rarely forces urgency early. Analytical thinkers create intentional urgency. Another factor is discomfort with impermanence. Impermanence destabilizes. Analytical thinkers stabilize through values. The core lesson of this chapter is this. The illusion of infinite time is not comforting, it is costly. It costs alignment, presence, courage, honest prioritization. Analytical thinkers treat time as finite, not to panic, but to choose deliberately. In the next chapter, we will explore death as a decision filter and how mortality clarifies what matters when everything competes for attention. Time does not ask politely. It passes. Chapter 3. Death as a decision filter. When everything feels important, decision-making collapses. Modern life presents endless options, obligations, and demands. Without a strong filter, people default to urgency, habit, or external pressure. Analytical thinkers use a filter most people avoid. Mortality. Death is not used as a threat. It is used as a clarifying constraint. When time is finite, decisions gain weight, not through fear, but through relevance. The first way death functions as a decision filter is priority elimination. Many choices only matter if time is assumed to be endless. When mortality is acknowledged, trivial pursuits lose appeal. Analytical thinkers ask, would this matter if time were limited? Would I choose this knowing time is finite? Another way death clarifies decisions is false urgency exposure. Much of what feels urgent is not important. Mortality strips away artificial deadlines. Analytical thinkers distinguish imposed urgency from meaningful urgency. Another function of death as a filter is value alignment testing. Mortality forces honesty. Actions that do not reflect values become harder to justify. Analytical thinkers choose alignment over convenience. Another way death clarifies decisions is regret forecasting. Imagining the end is not morbid, it is practical. Analytical thinkers ask, would I regret not doing this? Would I regret spending time this way? This reframes choices immediately. Another function of mortality is relationship prioritization. Death clarifies who matters. Analytical thinkers invest in relationships without postponement. Another way death filters decisions is ego reduction. Status, recognition, and image fade under mortality. Analytical thinkers pursue integrity over appearance. Another function is risk rebalancing. Some risks feel dangerous only because comfort is assumed to be permanent. Mortality reframes risk relative to finite time. Analytical thinkers take aligned risks earlier. Another way death clarifies decisions is boundary enforcement. Knowing time is limited makes boundaries necessary. Analytical thinkers say no more often, and with less guilt. Another function is opportunity cost visibility. Every yes becomes a clearer no to something else. Analytical thinkers choose deliberately. Another way death filters decisions is commitment seriousness. Commitments feel heavier when time is finite. Analytical thinkers commit only to what they can stand behind. Another function of mortality is distraction intolerance. Time spent distracted becomes visible as loss. Analytical thinkers reduce noise exposure. Another way death clarifies decisions is authorship acceleration. Waiting feels costly. Analytical thinkers stop postponing aligned action. Another function is honest self-evaluation. Mortality removes self-deception. Analytical thinkers stop lying about what matters. Another way death filters decisions is simplicity preference. Complex lives consume time. Analytical thinkers simplify intentionally. Another function is legacy orientation. Not legacy as fame, but as impact. Analytical thinkers ask, what remains after I'm gone? How do my actions echo? Another way death clarifies decisions is present moment waiting. Moments become less disposable. Analytical thinkers show up more fully. Another function is meaning compression. Meaning condenses around fewer things. Analytical thinkers let go easily. Another way death filters decisions is energy discipline. Energy becomes precious. Analytical thinkers stop wasting it. Another function is responsibility sharpening. Finite time demands ownership. Analytical thinkers accept responsibility early. Another way death clarifies decisions is conflict resolution. Many conflicts become irrelevant under mortality. Analytical thinkers disengage from unnecessary battles. Another function is fear hierarchy reset. Fear of embarrassment weakens. Fear of misalignment strengthens. Analytical thinkers act accordingly. Another way death filters decisions is long-term coherence checking. Actions are evaluated across the lifespan. Analytical thinkers choose consistency over impulse. Another function is gratitude amplification. Finite time increases appreciation. Analytical thinkers value presence over accumulation. Another way death clarifies decisions is option pruning. Infinite options shrink. Analytical thinkers focus. Another function is ethical grounding. Mortality heightens ethical clarity. Analytical thinkers choose integrity. Another way death filters decisions is habit reassessment. Repeated behaviors are evaluated honestly. Analytical thinkers change habits sooner. Another function is narrative clarity. Life stories become clearer. Analytical thinkers live fewer, truer chapters. Another way death clarifies decisions is time honesty. People stop pretending time is abundant. Analytical thinkers plan realistically. Another function is presence without urgency. Mortality does not require haste. It requires intention. Analytical thinkers move calmly. Another way death filters decisions is alignment urgency. Alignment becomes now, not later. Analytical thinkers choose sooner. Another function is emotional honesty. Avoidance becomes visible. Analytical thinkers face discomfort directly. Another way death clarifies decisions is self-respect preservation. Actions that erode dignity feel unacceptable. Analytical thinkers protect self-respect. Another function is meaningful risk acceptance. Risks aligned with values become necessary. Analytical thinkers accept them deliberately. Another way death filters decisions is closure awareness. Open loops gain weight. Analytical thinkers close what matters. Another function is simplified success definition. Success becomes alignment, not accumulation. Analytical thinkers redefine success. Another way death clarifies decisions is choice ownership. Excuses collapse. Analytical thinkers own choices. Another function is life audit activation. Regular reassessment becomes natural. Analytical thinkers ask, "Is this how I want to spend limited time?" The core lesson of this chapter is this: death is not a motivator. It is a filter. It removes noise, exposes truth, and clarifies priorities. Analytical thinkers do not obsess over death. They use it to live accurately. In the next chapter, we will explore what people regret when time runs out, and how regret can be used as a guide rather than a warning. Mortality does not demand fear. It demands honesty. Chapter 4: What people regret when time runs out. Regret is often misunderstood. People imagine regret as dramatic mistakes, obvious failures, or catastrophic decisions. In reality, the most common regrets are quiet, cumulative, and invisible while life is being lived. Analytical thinkers study regret not to avoid living, but to live with fewer illusions. The first major source of regret is misaligned time use. When people look back, they rarely regret specific busy days. They regret patterns. Years spent on things that did not matter. Energy invested where meaning never appeared. Analytical thinkers audit patterns early. Another deep regret is unexpressed truth. People regret what they did not say far more than what they said imperfectly. Silence chosen to preserve comfort becomes heavy over time. Analytical thinkers speak earlier, even when uncomfortable. Another common regret is postponed living. People wait for more money, more confidence, more approval, the right moment. That moment often never arrives. Analytical thinkers treat readiness as a direction, not a requirement. Another major regret is neglected relationships. Not dramatic betrayals, but slow neglect. Missed presence, unreturned attention, deferred connection. Analytical thinkers invest relationally without assuming later availability. Another regret is living by expectation instead of intention. Many people realize too late that their lives were shaped by obligation rather than choice. Analytical thinkers choose earlier and revise when needed. Another source of regret is self-betrayal. Small compromises made repeatedly erode self-respect. Analytical thinkers protect alignment even when inconvenient. Another regret is fear-based decision-making. Avoidance masquerades as caution. Years later, fear feels heavier than failure would have. Analytical thinkers accept aligned risk. Another common regret is overvaluing work at the expense of life. Achievement without meaning feels hollow in retrospect. Analytical thinkers define success holistically. Another regret is not allowing change. People cling to outdated identities. They remain loyal to versions of themselves that no longer fit. Analytical thinkers revise without shame. Another source of regret is emotional suppression. Unfelt grief, unexpressed joy, unacknowledged longing accumulate. Analytical thinkers allow emotional honesty. Another regret is waiting for permission. People realize no one was coming to authorize their lives. Analytical thinkers grant permission early. Another common regret is overcommitment to trivial obligations. Time drains quietly. Analytical thinkers choose commitments deliberately. Another regret is not choosing sooner. Indecision costs time without offering protection. Analytical thinkers decide earlier and adjust. Another source of regret is staying silent to avoid conflict. Short-term peace trades for long-term dissatisfaction. Analytical thinkers tolerate healthy conflict. Another regret is identity avoidance. People avoid asking who they are becoming. Years pass unnoticed. Analytical thinkers reflect intentionally. Another common regret is not prioritizing health and energy. People assume recovery will be easy later. Analytical thinkers respect physical limits early. Another regret is living reactively. Life happens to people who do not choose direction. Analytical thinkers author direction deliberately. Another source of regret is measuring life by comparison. Comparative success fades quickly. Analytical thinkers measure alignment instead. Another regret is not forgiving earlier. Grudges outlast their relevance. Analytical thinkers release resentment sooner. Another common regret is over-optimizing for security. Safety purchased at the cost of meaning feels expensive later. Analytical thinkers choose sustainable risk. Another regret is avoiding discomfort. Discomfort avoided becomes regret accumulated. Analytical thinkers accept discomfort as temporary. Another source of regret is neglecting curiosity. Routine dulls wonder. Analytical thinkers preserve curiosity. Another regret is waiting for clarity before acting. Clarity arrives through engagement. Analytical thinkers engage earlier. Another common regret is losing touch with values. People drift. Analytical thinkers recalibrate often. Another regret is tolerating misalignment for too long. Staying becomes harder than leaving. Analytical thinkers leave sooner. Another source of regret is confusing busy with meaningful. Full calendars hide empty direction. Analytical thinkers evaluate purpose, not activity. Another regret is not acknowledging mortality sooner. Time awareness arrives late. Analytical thinkers introduce it gently but early. Another regret is overlooking ordinary moments. Life is not only milestones. Analytical thinkers value presence. Another common regret is not choosing themselves. People sacrifice agency for approval. Analytical thinkers choose authorship. Another regret is delaying joy until conditions improve. Joy postponed often disappears. Analytical thinkers allow joy alongside effort. Another source of regret is not setting boundaries. Unbounded lives leak energy. Analytical thinkers protect boundaries early. Another regret is expecting happiness to arrive later. Happiness is not an endpoint. Analytical thinkers build meaning continuously. Another common regret is underestimating time's speed. Years pass quietly. Analytical thinkers act with awareness. Another regret is avoiding existential questions. Avoidance does not prevent reckoning. Analytical thinkers engage early. The central lesson of this chapter is this: regret is rarely about what you did. It is about what you delayed, avoided, or abandoned. Analytical thinkers do not live regret-free lives. They live regret-aware lives. In the next chapter, we will explore legacy without ego, and how meaning extends beyond lifespan without requiring recognition. Regret is not a warning sign. It is a guide, if consulted early. Chapter 5: Legacy without ego. When people hear the word legacy, they often imagine permanence. They think of being remembered, leaving a mark, or creating something that outlives them. This framing quietly centers the ego, even when intentions are sincere. Analytical thinkers approach legacy differently. Legacy is not about being remembered. It is about what continues because you lived the way you did. Most legacies are not visible. They are carried. The first misunderstanding about legacy is equating it with recognition. Recognition depends on audience, timing, and circumstance. It is unreliable and uncontrollable. Analytical thinkers do not build lives around applause. They focus on impact that does not require acknowledgement. Another misconception is legacy as achievement accumulation. People assume legacy comes from big accomplishments. In reality, legacy often emerges from small, repeated behaviors. Analytical thinkers understand that consistency outlasts spectacle. Another misunderstanding is legacy as reputation. Reputation is a story others tell. Legacy is a pattern others live. Analytical thinkers invest in how their actions shape others' choices. Another error is future fixation. People imagine legacy as something that begins after death. In truth, legacy is happening now. Analytical thinkers recognize that how they show up today already echoes forward. Another misconception is legacy as control. People want to shape how they will be remembered. Memory cannot be controlled. Analytical thinkers release control and focus on alignment. Another misunderstanding is legacy as monument. Buildings, titles, and records decay. Values transmitted through behavior persist longer. Analytical thinkers teach through example, not declaration. Another error is ego-driven immortality projects. Fear of death drives attempts at permanence. Analytical thinkers accept impermanence and still act meaningfully. Another misconception is legacy as uniqueness. People believe legacy requires being extraordinary. Most legacies are ordinary, but profound. Analytical thinkers value depth over novelty. Another misunderstanding is legacy as external. People look outward to measure impact. Analytical thinkers measure legacy internally, through integrity. Another error is legacy through domination. Power fades quickly. Influence grounded in trust endures longer. Analytical thinkers choose trust building over control. Another misconception is legacy as self-extension. People want their ideas, name, or identity to persist. Analytical thinkers accept that ideas will evolve beyond them. Another misunderstanding is legacy as justification. People chase legacy to validate suffering or sacrifice. Analytical thinkers do not demand future justification for present alignment. Another error is legacy as moral superiority. Legacy does not elevate worth. Analytical thinkers reject hierarchy in meaning. Another misconception is legacy as permanence denial. Attempting to live forever avoids confronting finitude. Analytical thinkers face finitude directly. Another misunderstanding is legacy as narrative closure. Life does not resolve neatly. Analytical thinkers accept unfinished endings. Another error is legacy as obligation to the future. People feel pressured to leave something behind. Analytical thinkers choose contribution freely, not compulsively. Another misconception is legacy through productivity alone. Productivity without care often leaves damage. Analytical thinkers balance creation with responsibility. Another misunderstanding is legacy as scale. Bigger impact is not always better impact. Analytical thinkers value local, relational influence. Another error is legacy as abstraction. People talk about legacy without grounding it in daily behavior. Analytical thinkers define legacy through habits. Another misconception is legacy as delayed meaning. Meaning postponed becomes empty. Analytical thinkers live meaning now. Another misunderstanding is legacy through avoidance of failure. Safe lives rarely shape others deeply. Analytical thinkers accept imperfect influence. Another error is legacy as comparison. Comparing legacies misses the point. Analytical thinkers focus on coherence, not competition. Another misconception is legacy as obligation to greatness. Pressure to matter creates anxiety. Analytical thinkers accept sufficiency. Another misunderstanding is legacy through identity projection. Forcing values onto others backfires. Analytical thinkers allow values to be observed, not imposed. Another error is legacy as ego repair. People try to compensate for internal dissatisfaction through future impact. Analytical thinkers address dissatisfaction directly. Another misconception is legacy as symbolic gestures. Symbols without substance fade quickly. Analytical thinkers prioritize lived consistency. Another misunderstanding is legacy as time defiance. Legacy does not defeat death. It coexists with it. Analytical thinkers accept this without despair. Another error is legacy as external memory. Memory fades. Influence embedded in behavior lasts longer. Analytical thinkers shape environments, not memories. Another misconception is legacy through control of interpretation. People want others to interpret their lives correctly. Analytical thinkers accept misinterpretation. Another misunderstanding is legacy as endpoint. Legacy is not something you reach. It is something you are always creating. Analytical thinkers live with awareness of ongoing impact. Another error is legacy as pressure amplifier. Thinking too much about legacy can paralyze action. Analytical thinkers let legacy emerge naturally from alignment. Another misconception is legacy without humility. Legacy grounded in ego collapses. Analytical thinkers act humbly. Another misunderstanding is legacy as substitute for presence. Some people sacrifice present life for imagined future impact. Analytical thinkers remain present. Another error is legacy as fear management. Fear-driven legacy is brittle. Analytical thinkers choose meaning, not fear. Another misconception is legacy as external validation across time. Validation delayed is still validation seeking. Analytical thinkers let go of validation entirely. Another misunderstanding is legacy as moral scorekeeping. Life is not audited. Analytical thinkers live responsibly without tallying. Another error is legacy as identity anchor. Identity anchored in future remembrance is unstable. Analytical thinkers anchor identity in values. Another misconception is legacy without boundaries. Sacrificing everything for legacy leads to resentment. Analytical thinkers protect balance. Another misunderstanding is legacy as ownership. People want ownership over what continues. Analytical thinkers accept continuation without ownership. Another error is legacy as consolation prize. Legacy cannot replace a misaligned life. Analytical thinkers live aligned now. The core lesson of this chapter is this: the most enduring legacy is not what you leave behind. It is what continues because you lived with integrity. Legacy without ego is quiet. How you treated people. What behavior you normalized. What standards you upheld. What courage you modeled. These things persist without your name attached. In the next chapter, we will explore choosing what deserves your time, and how finite time demands ruthless honesty about where energy is spent. Legacy does not begin at death. It is created daily. Chapter 6. Choosing what deserves your time. Time is not neutral. Every hour given to one thing is an hour removed from something else. Yet most people spend time reactively, responding to demands, expectations, and habits without asking whether those things deserve their attention. Analytical thinkers treat time differently. They treat time as a moral choice, not a scheduling problem. The first mistake people make is confusing urgency with importance. Urgent things demand attention loudly. Important things often remain quiet. Emails feel urgent. Notifications feel urgent. Expectations feel urgent. Meaning rarely announces itself. Analytical thinkers slow down enough to hear what matters. Another mistake is equating business with value. A full calendar feels productive. But fullness is not direction. Analytical thinkers evaluate time by alignment, not activity. Another reason people misallocate time is default acceptance. They say yes automatically. They inherit schedules rather than design them. Analytical thinkers recognize that every default is a silent decision. Another source of time misuse is social obligation inflation. People give time to avoid discomfort, not because it matters. Analytical thinkers accept short-term discomfort to preserve long-term integrity. Another reason time is poorly spent is role over-identification. People devote time to roles long after those roles stop reflecting values. Analytical thinkers periodically audit role alignment. Another cause is future discounting. People overvalue present convenience and undervalue future cost. Analytical thinkers respect future selves. Another reason people struggle to choose time wisely is decision avoidance. Choosing where time goes requires exclusion. Exclusion feels harsh. Analytical thinkers accept exclusion as necessary. Another source of misallocation is comparison pressure. People spend time chasing others' priorities. Analytical thinkers define success internally. Another cause is habit inertia. Routines persist without evaluation. Analytical thinkers review habits deliberately. Another reason time is wasted is entertainment over consumption. Rest is necessary. Distraction is not. Analytical thinkers rest intentionally rather than escape unconsciously. Another source is overcommitment to low-impact tasks. Small obligations accumulate invisibly. Analytical thinkers prune commitments regularly. Another reason people misjudge time is optimism bias. They believe they have more time than they do. Analytical thinkers act as if time is finite, calmly. Another cause is emotional avoidance. Some activities fill time to avoid introspection. Analytical thinkers allow empty space. Another reason time allocation fails is unclear values. Without values, time defaults to noise. Analytical thinkers clarify values first. Another source of waste is task accumulation without purpose. People do things because they have always done them. Analytical thinkers ask why repeatedly. Another reason people struggle is confusing availability with obligation. Just because you can does not mean you should. Analytical thinkers set boundaries. Another cause is misunderstanding rest. True rest restores. Mindless consumption drains. Analytical thinkers rest in ways that replenish energy. Another reason time is misused is fear of missing out. People say yes to avoid exclusion. Analytical thinkers accept missing out as inevitable. Another source is over-optimization. Trying to maximize every hour creates exhaustion. Analytical thinkers optimize selectively. Another reason people misallocate time is unclear endings. Tasks expand when boundaries are absent. Analytical thinkers define stopping points. Another cause is reactive living. Responding replaces choosing. Analytical thinkers act before reacting. Another reason time disappears is lack of reflection. Without reflection, patterns repeat. Analytical thinkers schedule reflection deliberately. Another source of misuse is confusing maintenance with meaning. Some tasks keep life running but do not build it. Analytical thinkers balance maintenance with creation. Another reason time feels scarce is overexposure to noise. Noise fragments attention. Analytical thinkers curate inputs. Another cause is emotional guilt spending. People give time to relieve guilt. Analytical thinkers address guilt directly. Another reason people struggle is undervaluing deep work. Shallow tasks crowd out depth. Analytical thinkers protect depth fiercely. Another source is misplaced loyalty. People remain loyal to outdated commitments. Analytical thinkers update loyalty responsibly. Another reason time is wasted is passive consumption of others' agendas. Algorithms decide priorities. Analytical thinkers reclaim agency. Another cause is confusing motion with progress. Movement does not guarantee direction. Analytical thinkers measure progress by alignment. Another reason people misallocate time is fear of stillness. Stillness reveals truth. Analytical thinkers tolerate stillness. Another source is overscheduling. Time filled in advance eliminates choice. Analytical thinkers leave margin. Another reason time disappears is lack of intentional beginnings. Days start reactively. Analytical thinkers start days deliberately. Another cause is overresponsibility. People take responsibility for things that are not theirs. Analytical thinkers choose responsibility consciously. Another reason people struggle is neglecting energy rhythms. Not all hours are equal. Analytical thinkers match tasks to energy. Another source is delaying difficult but meaningful tasks. Meaningful work often feels heavy initially. Analytical thinkers act before motivation. Another reason time is misused is invisible trade-offs. Every yes hides a no. Analytical thinkers make trade-offs explicit. Another cause is confusing long-term importance with distant action. Important things feel less urgent. Analytical thinkers schedule importance early. Another reason people misjudge time is lack of stopping criteria. They do not know when enough is enough. Analytical thinkers define sufficiency. Another source is emotional leakage. Unresolved emotion consumes time. Analytical thinkers process emotion proactively. Another reason time is wasted is not protecting attention. Attention leaks everywhere. Analytical thinkers guard attention ruthlessly. Another cause is fear of disappointing others. Time is sacrificed to preserve approval. Analytical thinkers accept disappointment. Another reason people struggle is not valuing solitude. Solitude clarifies priorities. Analytical thinkers cultivate solitude intentionally. Another source is postponing meaningful work to later. Later rarely arrives. Analytical thinkers act when alignment is clear. The core lesson of this chapter is this: not everything deserves your time, even if it asks for it. Analytical thinkers choose time allocation based on values, alignment, long-term impact, energy preservation, regret minimization. Time is not something you manage. It is something you spend. In the next chapter, we will explore living with urgency without panic, and how awareness of mortality sharpens focus without creating anxiety. Time does not need to be full. It needs to be honest. Chapter 7. Living with urgency without panic. Urgency is often misunderstood. Most people associate urgency with stress, haste, and pressure. They imagine urgency as frantic movement, rushing decisions, accelerating schedules, and compressing life into constant motion. This is not urgency. This is panic. Analytical thinkers draw a sharp distinction. Urgency is clarity. Panic is fear. Urgency emerges from understanding what matters. Panic emerges from feeling out of control. One sharpens focus. The other fragments it. The first mistake people make is equating urgency with speed. Speed is not urgency. Speed often reduces judgment. Analytical thinkers move deliberately, not frantically. Another mistake is using urgency as motivation. Motivation spikes and crashes. Urgency persists quietly. Analytical thinkers rely on steady urgency, not emotional spikes. Another reason urgency turns into panic is false time compression. People try to do everything now. Mortality does not demand everything. It demands the right things. Analytical thinkers narrow focus. Another source of panic is catastrophic framing. People imagine that delay equals failure. Analytical thinkers distinguish between delay and misalignment. Another reason urgency becomes anxiety is lack of prioritization. Without priorities, everything feels urgent. Analytical thinkers rank relentlessly. Another cause of panic is external pressure absorption. People internalize others' urgency. Analytical thinkers choose urgency consciously. Another reason urgency becomes stressful is perfectionism. Trying to do important things perfectly creates paralysis. Analytical thinkers act imperfectly but consistently. Another cause is confusing awareness with alarm. Mortality awareness does not require fear. Analytical thinkers integrate awareness calmly. Another reason urgency creates panic is overexposure to noise. Constant information inflates perceived urgency. Analytical thinkers reduce input. Another source of panic is unclear stopping points. Urgency without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Analytical thinkers define enough. Another reason urgency overwhelms is identity attachment. People tie urgency to self-worth. Analytical thinkers separate worth from pace. Another cause is misinterpreting seriousness as heaviness. Serious things can be approached lightly. Analytical thinkers remain calm even when matters are important. Another reason urgency feels oppressive tells is absence of rest. Rest is not delay. Rest sustains urgency. Analytical thinkers rest strategically. Another cause of panic is reactive scheduling. Days fill themselves. Analytical thinkers schedule intentionally. Another reason urgency collapses into stress is ignoring energy limits. Finite time also means finite energy. Analytical thinkers pace themselves. Another source of panic is comparison acceleration. Seeing others move faster creates pressure. Analytical thinkers move at aligned speed. Another reason urgency turns unhealthy is fear of wasting time. Fear distorts urgency. Analytical thinkers act from intention, not fear. Another cause is over-identification with outcomes. Outcomes cannot be controlled fully. Analytical thinkers focus on process alignment. Another reason urgency becomes anxiety is unclear values. Without values, urgency has no direction. Analytical thinkers clarify values first. Another source of panic is emotional suppression. Ignoring fear amplifies it. Analytical thinkers acknowledge fear without obeying it. Another reason urgency feels chaotic is overcommitment. Too many important things dilute urgency. Analytical thinkers choose fewer commitments. Another cause is short-term thinking. Urgency focused only on now becomes frantic. Analytical thinkers hold long horizons. Another reason urgency creates stress is lack of autonomy. When urgency feels imposed, resistance grows. Analytical thinkers own urgency. Another source of panic is unresolved guilt. Guilt accelerates urgency irrationally. Analytical thinkers resolve guilt directly. Another reason urgency overwhelms is confusing effort with worth. Working harder feels urgent. Analytical thinkers value direction over effort. Another cause is emergency mindset habituation. Living in crisis mode exhausts. Analytical thinkers reserve urgency for what matters. Another reason urgency turns toxic is neglecting meaning. Meaning stabilizes urgency. Analytical thinkers reconnect to meaning regularly. Another source of panic is lack of closure. Open loops create background anxiety. Analytical thinkers close loops intentionally. Another reason urgency feels heavy is decision backlog. Unmade decisions accumulate stress. Analytical thinkers decide early. Another cause is external validation pressure. Trying to prove urgency exhausts. Analytical thinkers act without performance. Another reason urgency collapses into panic is fear of irreversibility. Some choices feel final. Analytical thinkers approach irreversible decisions calmly. Another source of panic is underestimating recovery. People fear they won't recover from mistakes. Analytical thinkers trust resilience. Another reason urgency overwhelms is emotional contagion. Others' panic spreads. Analytical thinkers regulate exposure. Another cause is over-dramatizing mortality. Death is not an emergency siren. It is a boundary. Analytical thinkers respect the boundary without dramatizing it. Another reason urgency becomes exhausting is absence of joy. Urgency without joy becomes burden. Analytical thinkers allow joy alongside seriousness. Another source of panic is confusing motion with progress. Moving fast feels urgent. Analytical thinkers measure progress by alignment. Another reason urgency overwhelms is lack of perspective. Short-term setbacks feel catastrophic. Analytical thinkers zoom out. Another cause is internal pressure accumulation. People pressure themselves endlessly. Analytical thinkers release unnecessary pressure. Another reason urgency feels unsafe is lack of trust in self. Without trust, urgency feels threatening. Analytical thinkers build self-trust gradually. Another source of panic is overcommitment to future outcomes. The future is uncertain. Analytical thinkers commit to present action. Another reason urgency becomes panic is unexamined fear of death. Fear unexamined grows louder. Analytical thinkers examine fear honestly. Another cause is misinterpreting calm as complacency. Calm urgency is still urgency. Analytical thinkers remain calm without delay. Another reason urgency overwhelms is lack of rhythm. Life requires cycles. Analytical thinkers respect rhythm. Another source of panic is expecting urgency to feel good. Urgency is not excitement. It is seriousness. Analytical thinkers accept seriousness without distress. The core lesson of this chapter is this: urgency does not require panic. It requires clarity. Analytical thinkers live with urgency by choosing deliberately, acting consistently, letting go easily, resting strategically, staying calm. Mortality sharpens life. It does not demand haste. In the final chapter, we will explore a life measured in alignment, not length, and how meaning is not counted in years, but in coherence. Urgency is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters, while there is time. Chapter 8. A life measured in alignment, not length. When people think about life, they often think in terms of duration. How long someone lived. How many years they had. How much time they were given. Length becomes the metric. But length alone tells us almost nothing. Analytical thinkers understand a deeper truth. A life is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how honestly it is lived. Time is the container. Alignment is the content. Two lives of equal length can differ radically in meaning. The difference is not luck. It is authorship. The first mistake people make is equating more time with more meaning. More time does not guarantee clarity. It often increases distraction. Analytical thinkers do not wait for extra time to live well. They live well within the time they have. Another misconception is treating longevity as success. Longevity is biological. Meaning is intentional. Analytical thinkers separate survival from significance. Another illusion is postponing alignment until later years. People believe meaning is a final chapter. But alignment is not cumulative. It is immediate. Analytical thinkers align now, not someday. Another mistake is confusing endurance with fulfillment. Enduring a life does not equal inhabiting it. Analytical thinkers inhabit their choices. Another misconception is assuming alignment requires ideal conditions. Alignment is possible in imperfect circumstances. Analytical thinkers work within constraints. Another illusion is waiting to become ready to live intentionally. Readiness rarely arrives. Alignment does. Analytical thinkers choose alignment even when unsure. Another mistake is measuring life by milestones alone. Milestones punctuate life. They do not define it. Analytical thinkers focus on daily coherence. Another misconception is treating time as the primary resource. Time matters, but attention and integrity matter more. Analytical thinkers protect attention fiercely. Another illusion is believing that meaning accumulates automatically. Meaning must be practiced. Analytical thinkers practice alignment repeatedly. Another mistake is confusing longevity with avoidance. Avoiding risk can extend life, but thin it. Analytical thinkers choose sustainable risk. Another misconception is measuring life by productivity. Productivity measures output. Alignment measures intention. Analytical thinkers value intention. Another illusion is postponing difficult choices to preserve time. Delaying alignment costs more time than it saves. Analytical thinkers choose earlier. Another mistake is believing that a long life compensates for misalignment. Years cannot compensate for a life lived out of sync. Analytical thinkers correct course early. Another misconception is confusing comfort with peace. Comfort dulls. Peace aligns. Analytical thinkers seek peace through integrity. Another illusion is treating mortality as a countdown clock. Mortality is not a timer. It is a boundary. Analytical thinkers live freely within it. Another mistake is measuring success by accumulation. Accumulation distracts from coherence. Analytical thinkers measure success by alignment. Another misconception is believing meaning must be extraordinary. Most meaningful lives are quiet. Analytical thinkers accept quiet alignment. Another illusion is assuming that alignment eliminates hardship. Aligned lives still contain loss. But loss makes sense. Analytical thinkers tolerate hardship without losing direction. Another mistake is waiting to be remembered before living well. Memory is unreliable. Alignment is immediate. Analytical thinkers live without waiting for recognition. Another misconception is believing that length justifies misalignment. More years do not justify less honesty. Analytical thinkers choose honesty regardless of time. Another illusion is treating the end as the evaluator of life. Life is evaluated continuously. Analytical thinkers align daily. Another mistake is thinking that meaning requires narrative closure. Lives rarely resolve cleanly. Analytical thinkers accept unfinished stories. Another misconception is believing that a shorter life is necessarily tragic. A misaligned long life can be heavier. Analytical thinkers understand that quality of alignment matters more than quantity of time. Another illusion is using mortality to pressure perfection. Perfection is unnecessary. Integrity is sufficient. Analytical thinkers choose integrity. Another mistake is believing that alignment is static. Alignment evolves. Analytical thinkers recalibrate regularly. Another misconception is treating values as abstract ideals. Values must be operational. Analytical thinkers live values daily. Another illusion is postponing authenticity until risk disappears. Risk never disappears. Analytical thinkers live authentically anyway. Another mistake is confusing legacy with length. Legacy emerges from how life is lived, not how long. Analytical thinkers focus on present influence. Another misconception is thinking that time owed guarantees meaning. No one is owed meaning. Meaning is created. Analytical thinkers create meaning deliberately. Another illusion is treating death as the moment meaning is judged. Meaning is judged continuously by alignment. Analytical thinkers align now. Another mistake is believing that alignment requires certainty. Certainty is not required. Commitment is. Analytical thinkers commit without guarantees. Another misconception is thinking that time must feel meaningful to be meaningful. Meaning is often recognized in retrospect. Analytical thinkers trust alignment even when it feels ordinary. Another illusion is assuming that alignment is dramatic. Alignment is often subtle. Saying no. Leaving earlier. Choosing honesty. Acting without approval. Revising direction. Analytical thinkers honor small acts of integrity. Another mistake is measuring life by external metrics. Metrics change. Alignment remains. Analytical thinkers measure internally. Another misconception is thinking that a long life forgives wasted years. Wasted years still weigh. Analytical thinkers minimize waste early. Another illusion is treating mortality as a motivator instead of a guide. Fear motivates briefly. Alignment guides consistently. Analytical thinkers use mortality as orientation. Another mistake is believing that alignment ends doubt. Doubt persists. Analytical thinkers act anyway. Another misconception is thinking that meaning must be intense. Meaning can be gentle. Analytical thinkers accept gentle meaning. Another illusion is waiting for permission to live fully. Permission never arrives. Analytical thinkers live deliberately. Another mistake is treating time as something to beat. Time is not an opponent. Analytical thinkers work with time, not against it. The final truth of this audiobook, and the entire series, is this. A good life is not one that lasts the longest. It is one that remains defensible when time runs out. When you look back, not at duration, but at direction. Not at achievements, but at alignment. You recognize the difference between a life that passed and a life that was lived on purpose. Time will end. That is not negotiable. What is negotiable is how honestly, deliberately, and coherently you live before it does.